You're watching or listening to Strangers in Space, and in this very brief news edition, we're going to be talking about the death of Doctor Who, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm John.
Hi, I'm Ryan.
I am Simon.
Oh, I'm Steve.
So, we had, as a podcast, heard a few weeks ago from inside sources that the streamer that the BBC were actually talking to, or BBC Studios probably, were actually talking to about becoming a replacement for Disney was Amazon Prime. And apparently the conversation was fairly well advanced. And we thought there was a good chance, given the situation, that that might resolve itself to our benefit and that we'd hear before the end of the year or early next. Because I think the sort of thing that underpinned the conversation was, where is the best place for Doctor Who to be? And sort of in terms of content, you think Disney Plus because it sits rather nicely in between Marvel and Star Wars. Trouble is, nobody's subscribing to Disney Plus for Doctor Who that's not already subscribed for Marvel or Star Wars, are they? So actually, it turns out Disney Plus is, financially speaking, the worst place for Doctor Who to be. When we heard Amazon were interested, well, I can't think offhand anyway, of anything on Amazon's plate as things stand that's remotely in the sort of area of Doctor Who. So Doctor Who would have been a good
Rings, Rings of Power, maybe that kind of thing.
Well, that's finished, isn't it? That's kind of the
It has
point,
now,
isn't it?
yeah.
They need something to sort
So
of
back it,
replace it,
yeah.
really, don't they? So it looked to me like Amazon would be the best place for it to go. And you would think that being a good place for Doctor Who to go, Amazon and the BBC would thrash it out. Well, the thing that we've heard is that the conversation went to places about how much control Amazon would have over the sort of panoply of Doctor Who, other things than just the TV series as it stands. And they couldn't figure it out. The BBC didn't want to give as much control as Amazon wanted by the sound of it. And so Amazon are off the table, which leads us to the point, well, Doctor Who really isn't going to be back for quite some serious amount of time now, is it? The BBC are throwing out lots of quotes about how they want to get Doctor Who back on our screens and how they're looking for somebody to do it. But if Disney aren't doing it and Amazon aren't doing it, I can't really see who else is going to do it because Netflix don't need it and Apple TV Plus, it's not
That's
really.
not a fit for anyone, is it? They
Yeah,
do their own stuff and that's it.
exactly. So I think it's like Netflix or bust now, frankly. And I can't see Netflix picking up Disney and Amazon's sloppy thirds. So I just wanted to have a sort of quick 10 or 15 minutes on, well, what do we think? How have we got here? What do we think might happen? Are we disappointed? Are we actually happy that, I mean, Doctor Who probably will be back, almost certainly. We'll be back on our TV screens at some point, maybe 5 or 10 years into the future, but not in the very near future by the sound of it. Do we think it's
Well,
a good thing for it to take a break? I don't know.
it's in the BBC report, isn't it? That they want to put it on next year, so they will be actively looking for production. I don't think Aretta's a good idea because it's not a one-part process of, oh, we'll just rest it for a few years and bring it back. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
two-part process. You have to go, we're not making it, we are making it, and there's no guarantee you get to that second part.
Well,
So I think that's tough.
especially as Doctor Who is not going to be anything other than an expensive program.
Absolutely.
Because that,
Even if
because
even if Russell T Davies can do it on the cheap as he says he can.
Well, for all Russell T Davis saying, oh, we could do it on the cheap and just set it in somebody's living room, who actually is going to want to pay for that and who actually is going to want to see that? So,
Disney did. There was a bit Lux was set in someone's living room for a bit of
well, I
it.
think that was part of the problem. Although for my money, I don't think the decision to go to Disney was a bad decision. And I don't think the decision to have Russell T Davis back to do a second stint was a bad decision. I've said this right from the start, or right from the start of this conversation, going back 6 months, 8 months, whatever it is, since we started talking about this stuff. It's just a case of bad timing. Russell T Davies came in intending to make a continuation, a continuity heavy continuation for the existing fan base on iPlayer. Whereas the BBC are selling it to Disney, and they're not selling them the back catalogue. So Disney needs something that starts from scratch. And so you get this real fudge where it just doesn't start from scratch. And so it's not going to pick up an audience at Disney. And at the same time as this is happening, the guy at Disney who was interested in Doctor Who in the first place steps aside and somebody steps into his job who's got no interest in Doctor Who whatsoever. And so Doctor Who becomes this sort of thing that actually this sort of hot potato that's sort of sitting there soaking up money and not doing anything for them and has no interest at a higher level, really. As Stephen Shapansky said, on their podcast and on ours, Disney wanted it because their deal with the BBC meant they'd get Bluey. And we've seen the figures for Bluey. The figures are huge. Now, the figures are slightly fudged because children's TV doesn't work in the same way as grown-up TV does. You can stick Bluey on all day, every day for the kids, and that racks up the minutes. But it just means that a few households are watching a lot of Bluey, not the other way around. So the
But
figures aren't
Disney are getting subscribers from that. That's the big thing.
exactly subscribers, or they're keeping subscribers that.
Yeah.
I think the way Disney works is they get the subscribers for the back catalogue, the big movies, the sort of classic TV programs, and you keep them by every now and again providing something like Bluey that keeps their interest, right? Whereas Doctor Who doesn't do that for them unless they get
Yeah,
their back
it
catalogue.
stops them cancelling, doesn't it? Because
Yeah,
if your kids love it, then they're not going to cancel anything because those kids need to be kept quiet for 5 minutes while they have a break.
exactly. So, anybody else got any thoughts about whether Arrest is? Because I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Arrest is just what Doctor Who needs," and I always think, no, it's not, because Doctor Who's a program that refreshes itself without resting. But I don't know. Anybody want to wave the flag for Doctor Who taking a rest?
I don't know about taking a rest, but I certainly, I don't think, I think for the vast majority of us, we don't want Doctor Who at any cost, do we? So it's kind of reassuring that if there is this decision of saying, well, no, we're not going to hand over loads of control to someone else, that at least that is kind of happening, that these
It's
things are getting
reassuring.
reined in.
It's reassuring.
Yeah.
Do you know what though? I used to think that. I used to think, no, I wouldn't want Doctor Who to get into the wrong hands. But actually, there is probably a bigger part of me now that says, no, let somebody who's got no interest in Doctor Who make it, because they'll be making Doctor Who that still has that same core, concept, the same core premise, and the same core ideals. And they'll be doing something vastly different with it.
No. Really not, because the thing is, no, if unless you actually know what Doctor Who actually is about, reading just a description of what Doctor Who is about can end up with you producing something utterly wrong.
But Steve, nobody in 2025 is going to make Doctor Who based on just a description.
No, I suppose not. But I mean, personally, I'd very much welcome the BBC saying, look, we need to cut our coat according to our cloth. We can't afford the multi-millions per episode that's been going on, or whatever it is. That's perhaps a bit of an exaggeration. But we
No,
can
it's
make
not an
Doctor Who.
exaggeration. Yeah.
No, but we can make Doctor Who. We can make Doctor Who. I mean, 1969, they decided they had to save money on Doctor Who by having the Doctor exiled to Earth, by having longer part stories, so you got fewer opening nights and fewer changes of cast and so on. And the result was one of
the big thing they
best
did in
series ever.
'69 was cut the number of episodes per year from 48 to 26.
Well, absolutely that as well. Yes. So I don't see a reason why they couldn't do something like that again. I really don't. I mean, yes, Doctor Who is about travels in space and time, but it doesn't necessarily have to be for a year or two. It could be based on Earth for a year or two, and then it lets things reestablish itself. It lets things rest while still going on, in effect, reinvent itself.
I don't know how much money they can save just by doing that, though, because, I mean, let's look at series 1 of RTD2. That, by and large, is that you've just described, and that was the Doctor Who that cost twice as much, because it's the behind the scenes expenses that have gone up.
It doesn't have to have writers who are all also showrunners and therefore expensive. It doesn't have to have stars who are about to become big international stars who are too old to do the show at 32 because they can't take it. Which was the latest ridiculous statement we've had this last week
Well, that
from
is the equivalent of Christopher Eccleston's "I don't want to be typecast," isn't it? Nobody
well,
actually
he didn't
thinks.
say that though. He never said that.
But this is the point. Nobody. Ncuti Gatwa is talking crap because he's not the kind of person who's going to say, "Yeah, they fucked me over and I didn't like it, so I walked away."
Oh, I got fired. He's not going to
Well,
say
I
that
mean,
either.
It's
No.
rumors.
but the truth is
Yeah,
probably
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
Doctor Who was going into a 18-month turnaround, and you don't want to be tied to something that's sitting in turnaround while
No,
you're
no.
sitting there at home thinking, I could be doing so many other things, but I'm tied to this contract. That's what happened.
Yeah,
It's not.
no,
It's not being tied to contract. It's just the casting directors wouldn't even think of him.
no,
Hmm.
no.
But
They-
he would have to be free at certain times of the year, whether they were making Doctor. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the way the contract works. You need to be ready in September for us to start work. And then you don't start work till December. Oh no, actually it's pushed back till next March, and so on and so forth. And the actor is tied to this. Look at how he comes in of Sex Education, and that was a much simpler situation where he was just doing reshoots. Imagine if those reshoots had turned into, yeah, we put production back by 6 months. He can't get another job,
Mhm.
so he's just sitting there at the start of a massive career potentially, twiddling his thumbs and doing nothing. Ryan, any thoughts on I don't know any of this?
Well, the situation's not without precedent. We've had years off before, and excluding the wilderness years, obviously, I'm not talking about that. But Capaldi had a break for a year. We had the Colin Baker 18 months thing when the show was in a lot more danger. At the moment, it seems like they're trying to shop around to give Doctor Who the best possible future. So I take some optimism from that. It's a matter of whether they're going to say, right, if we don't get Doctor Who to have a production partner by day X, are we just going to go ahead and do a low budget version on the BBC on its own? And until they announce that, it's just no Doctor Who, which is slightly more worrying, despite all the positive things they say. I mean, for God's sakes, the BBC Doctor Who department, or whatever it's called, are the biggest bunch of liars, I think, since the Republican Party. So you can't trust anything they say directly. So unless they announce something, I don't mean this to be like overly controversial, but Doctor Who is kind of cancelled until it's not effectively right now. Because until they say it's coming back by this time, or we were going to work to get a partner, and then if we don't, we're going to make it on a lower budget. There's no Doctor Who, full stop. And that's the sort of long and short of it. So that's my worry, that what they've said is all very nice, but someone's got to work in the morning, can't be sort of waiting around for this. So if they don't give us something concrete, all they're really telling us, the bare fact of what they're telling us is there is no more Doctor Who.
They can't give us anything concrete now because there's nothing concrete for them to give us.
No, but what I'm saying is there's no sort of deadlines, there's no dates, there's no.
They
We
can't
are
give us
talking to.
dates. There's no dates for them to give
I
us.
mean, in the sense of like a rough. There's nothing even approaching an estimate, is what I'm saying. It's not like we're saying we're going to give it this long to retool it or anything like that. They're just saying it's just vagaries. That's
Because
what I'm
that's all
saying.
they've got. All they've got is vague. Until somebody comes in with the money, they can't even start to think about going back into production.
No, but what I'm saying is, okay, how can I put this?
I know what you're saying is that there's no
I'm not
news.
asking, they can't give us any concrete fact. I know that, but there's not even much of a plan at the moment that they're working towards.
Yeah, but I think that's it. I think that's the situation in a nutshell is there is no plan because until they have somebody who'll make it with them, you can't make a plan. So we know that Russell T Davies wrote a third season or a large part of it. We know that pre-production was ready to get started on a third season, and that's the point at which and so this is the thing that beggars my belief a bit. The production office was ready to roll on series three. And at that point, they realized that the Disney deal wasn't moving forwards. So they had writers, they had paid writers. Bad Wolf had paid writers to write episodes for the third series, and at that point, it suddenly becomes clear that it's not going to happen. So they at first put it back, and then they just put it on ice. And now it looks like that third series under RTD is not going to happen at all. I mean, I suppose you could have an 11th hour miracle, and whoever comes in wants RTD and wants that third series, but that ain't going to happen.
Hmm.
I mean, if Billy Piper's in it at all, it has to be in order to segue into a completely fresh start, whatever happens next. And again, this comes back to, well, does this happen quickly enough that Bad Wolf is still on board, or does it become a completely clean break where you go to a new production company? Who knows?
The
Yeah,
thing in
well,
the BBC report confused me a little, to be honest, because there was a lot of bill of bigging up the deal with Disney there, it seemed to me, and Disney is an important partner with us on this and so on. I mean, it was almost as if they were trying to butter up Disney with the idea of going back to them and saying, "Please, we really love you."
But when do you think that was written, Steve?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
also,
Yeah, but you could still edit it though.
it's still a good deal for the BBC because of Bluey. That's not under threat.
No.
And you've still got part of the Disney stuff that hasn't yet been broadcast. So you're not gonna,
Yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
keep bigging up the Disney stuff while you've still got stuff to show on TV because you still want people coming in to watch it. Disney still want subscribers to say, yeah, I need to see The War Between the Land and the Sea. I mean, on Radio Free Skaro, we were talking about, I'm pretty sure that Chris or Warren, one of those guys, said, yeah, I was thinking of getting rid of Disney Plus, and then I realized War Between the Land and the Sea still hasn't happened yet, so I'm going to keep my subscription at least till then. That's one subscriber that Disney, and that's not in isolation. If he's an example of it, that means there are others too. So it might not be a huge number, but nobody at this moment is going to start saying bad things about the Disney BBC deal because there is still stuff to
Yeah.
broadcast from
Of
that
course.
deal.
Of course. Of course. Yes, we're almost forgetting the war between the land and the sea.
Oh yeah, there is
It's
still,
hardly being mentioned. It's hardly being mentioned.
Lost.
but it's
Yeah.
become like Class, hasn't it? It's become an afterthought,
Poor
and
thing, poor
the
thing.
rest of the news has taken over.
There's too much weight on it because of where it is and the circumstances at the time.
Yeah,
It is only meant to be a one and done though, Land and the Sea.
Yeah.
It's a mini series. It's not
yeah.
meant to be ongoing. Okay. Just wanted to check in case that was even more pressure on it.
As
It's
far
going to
as we
be,
know, anyway.
yeah. I mean, as far as we know, it just looks like a story unto its own right, where Russell T Davies has said Shape of Water meets Children of Earth, I guess, something like that. And let's use the Sea Devils because they live in the water, right? So,
Damp Torchwood, as it was described.
yeah. But it doesn't look like it's going to be anything to do with the Sea Devils as we know them. It looks like it really is going to be a Shape of Water style love story. Did I say Weight of Water? Shape of Water. Shape of Water type love story with political ramifications about immigration and such like. So it's probably going to be very political and also a little bit Guillermo del Toro and probably a whole lot Torchwood. I said it was going to be brief. Has anybody got any more thoughts on this? Because I think we've whizzed through most of the things I think I wanted to say.
Yeah, I don't think there's that much, is there? But go on, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I don't want to start up another half to the episode, but this idea of the Hooniverse, I just can't help feeling that it's kind of, in a funny ways, it is misguided.
Totally. Yeah.
In as much as we all think it's a great idea because we're the long term fans. We're just a fraction of the audience, and to think that that's something attractive to the majority of the audience is just it's just not going to happen because the average person will watch Doctor Who because of a bit of a laugh and they have nice memories of it when they get older and that sort of thing. But it's only us nerds who just really get completely, committed to the program and we dive right into the whole history of it.
Well, the thing is, there's plenty of them about, and putting the entire back catalogue up on iPlayer was a great idea for the British audience
Yeah.
because lots of kids will suddenly say, "Oh, I need to find out where Sutek came from, or whatever, or I just need to see more of this, or I hear the Doctor saying something about being the last of the Time Lords. What are the other Time Lord stories? Do we get to have stories when they were around? Putting the You and Who books together, I've said this before, all the essays I was getting were saying, "Oh God!" The first thing I saw was the Five Doctors or some Dalek story, and I wanted to know where the continuity came from. So I wanted to dive in, and I got into the Target books and the ones I bought with the Three Doctors and this kind of stuff because I wanted to know where all this stuff came from. Yeah, that's great. That's what hooks in your new audience. Trouble is, in Britain, it's already got that audience, and in America, where you want to hook that audience in, Disney Plus has got no back catalogue. And so it's kind of a hiding to nothing. Bad timing.
It's interesting because it's going to be a conversation for a different episode, but I think the Superman film is doing a lot of what we're talking about here and about what Russell T Davies is doing.
Yeah,
And that's obviously done well. So
yeah.
Totally is, yeah. But I don't. But the entire point of that, I think, I've not seen it yet. The entire point of that is it dispenses with the continuity and reinvents it or represents it, doesn't it?
it doesn't dispense with the continuity, no.
But represents it, I think, in a way that Russell T Davies doesn't, because Superman. I don't know. I've not seen it, but Superman wants you to join with Superman. Whereas I think Russell T Davies's problem was he wants to send you back to the catalogue.
Hmm.
Does
Yeah.
does Superman do that? Is Superman?
It just kind of jumps straight into the continuity of the comics,
Oh,
doesn't
totally.
it?
It
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
does.
It just dispenses with this idea of introducing people bit by bit and just says, oh no, this is the world. Bang, you're in the middle of it.
Well, for example, the Superman movie does not tell you his origin,
Yeah, fair.
which I think is a critical element.
And he's surrounded by other comic characters.
Yeah.
Timeless
Yeah.
children, then, Ryan.
The only thing is his origins mentioned in it drives a bit of the plot. That's it.
But does it in a way that sort of reflects the world rather than making you
Yes.
think I'm missing out on something here.
Yeah, it's a new beginning, and here's all this stuff that's part of this world, rather than go
Yeah.
back and read Action Comics #1 from 1938.
Because the Russell T Davies thing starts with Tennant and Tate, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you can't get and then Ncuti Gatwa gets introduced during the Tennant and Tate bit. So automatically you're not making the Ncuti Gatwa bit a fresh start. And then you don't have Ncuti Gatwa and the companion straight away. You've got to do these sort of weird, sort of bit by bit introductions to the sort of various elements of it. I think if you're doing Doctor Who for a brand new audience, you start with a big bang that says this is what the program is, rather than drip feeding them stuff across 3, 4, 5, 6 episodes and saying, yeah, because the reason why Rose up until Dalek works in 2005 is because it's happening in Britain where most of the people watching have a cultural memory of what all this stuff is. So you're drip feeding them the things they already know, and they're excited to see, oh, how are they going to do the Daleks? How are they going to do the TARDIS? How are they going to do stories in history? Whereas in America, they're not expecting that stuff, waiting for that stuff. They need to be told that stuff. They need to have that stuff quick enough at the start that you hook them in straight away. And it absolutely fails to do that. But again, like I say, I don't think that's Russell T Davies's fault. I think he and the BBC had different aims, and nobody sat anybody down and said, right, this is our mission statement for what we need. So it all just became this stupid mess at the start, I think.
Well, it's a repeat of was it Jeffrey Sachs who did the Eighth Doctor movie?
He directed
Directed,
it.
yeah.
He directed. I can't remember who the name of the writer was. Off the top
Matthew
of my head.
Jacobs.
Thank you very much. Made the same mistake again of it's not Paul McGann that's the special bit. We've got all this front-loaded backstory. You got the Seventh Doctor for ages, and then he changes and makes.
But again, that's not Matthew Jacobs' fault.
No,
that's the
it wasn't.
BBC
Well, okay,
insisting
yeah, sorry,
we need
but
X, Y, and
whoever
Z.
it is hasn't learnt
Yeah.
the lessons of
It
history.
wasn't Matthew Jacobs' fault. No.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
apologise. Well, yeah. So, but whoever it was, the powers that be have not learned that lesson of, like you said, a bold step forwards, not one step forward, two steps back. It's like they're doing a
Yeah.
foxtrot, you know?
The BBC love Doctor Who. The BBC don't understand Doctor Who. And so they come up with these ideas. I'll tell you a little story by way of illustration, and I'll have to remove some of the names from this and some of the absolute detail from this, and maybe I'll tell you off the air afterwards. But at the 50th anniversary, so this happened at the 20th anniversary too, but at the 50th anniversary, there were plans in place to do certain things for the classic series fans that would have been ongoing in nature. And this came through BBC Studios, probably BBC Worldwide at the time. And there were budgets allocated for certain things. And the way that they were doing it was being made by an independent production company, this thing that I'm talking about. And the independent production company knew they needed more budget for this and less budget for that. But the way BBC Studios works is they have to square off the budgets so that there's equitability across them. So it was down to the independent people then to sort of massage the budgets into the places they need them. But it relied, the more expensive end of the stuff relied on the cheaper end of the stuff to prop it up. You get to the 50th anniversary and they do their annual meeting where this company goes to the BBC and says, right, what budgets can we have for next year? And do you know what BBC Studios said? They said, oh, we've just had the 50th anniversary. Nobody's interested in Doctor Who anymore. We'll just cancel all the cheap ones. And by cancelling all the cheap ones, the entire DVD range stopped. So there you go. There's a little bit of detail. But do you know what I mean? That's how the BBC looks at it. The BBC doesn't understand Doctor Who. The BBC doesn't understand.
It treats it as just another program at that point, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it doesn't understand that the way the Doctor Who world works is as part of a sort of what's the thing called when you have a circle, a sort of encompassment of various different elements that all need to be in motion at the same time to keep the whole thing rolling forwards. The BBC didn't understand this, and they basically thought, oh, if we take the wheels off, if we take the tires off, the wheels will still be there, right? But if you've got the tires off, the vehicle's not moving because, yeah, the wheels might still be there, but they're not taking the wheel, they're not moving the vehicle down the road. It comes to a dead stop. That's how the BBC looks at it.
It's tough because if say no one's interested in the Doctor anymore, the 50th is surely an opportunity, not a stop.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's how they looked at it then. And it looks to me like that's the kind of mentality that went into the Disney deal because they didn't think about the back end. They just assumed the whole thing was safe. And of course, now the back end has come up and fucked them solidly from behind. On which note,
Well, you just got us the extra stuff.
well, I already swore earlier, so I think I was. We probably will come back to talk about this in more detail in a couple of weeks. I have no doubt, or next time there's some news. But until then, I was JR.
I was John.
I was Ryan.
I was Simon.
And I was Steve.
And we will speak again soon.